Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to my tutorial for part 3 of the coding assignment for authentication and admin. And this is the part where we get into the particulars of authentication. And there's just a lot of details that we have to get to make work. So we're going to follow a script, and I'm showing you the script on your screen right now. It's 16 steps long. Most of the steps we're going to do together. There are two places, step 9 and step number 16, where I'm going to pause, and you're going to do a thing that we did for instance, one of the model classes. You're going to do it for all the rest of the model classes. And then we'll end the pause and we'll get back together. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the plan for permissions and groups. So why don't we do that? I've got a spreadsheet here. Okay, and so Django uses a typical permissions authorization scheme in which users are given login credentials, and each user can be given one of many permissions, or more typically, users are assigned to groups, and the groups are given the permissions because it's just a whole lot easier to set up the groups so that you have a group for each role that can be played. And then, especially when you have quite a few people who play a role, if you decide to give them additional responsibilities or take responsibilities away, you don't have to change it for all the individual users. You just have to change it for the group. So that's what we're going to do here, and it's a typical practice. The permission scheme in Django, the built-in one, is associated with the database model. And just right out of the box, by having used the features of the model, we have permissions defined for each of the model classes. And the ones that come out of the box are called add, change, and delete. And there's a set of those for each of the model classes. So we have an add, change, and delete for calendar period, for semester, for course, for section, for instructor, and for student. Okay? Interestingly enough, there is no built-in permission for just being able to see something. And this really has to do, I think, with the roots of Django as a bloggy kind of platform. Whereas, in blogs, everybody can see everything. Okay? What you don't want is people to be able to change things. Okay? And I know it's an exaggeration. Everybody can see everything. Well, in a typical business record keeping database application like our Easy University, we want to control also who can see what. Okay. We're not just going to have a system there for anybody to be able to see who our students are and what our courses are and who's registered for which course and all of that kind of stuff, which we consider to be private information, which we are expected to protect. So what we're going to do is we're going to create one more permission per model class. And we're going to call it view. And why we're going to call it view, that's what most people call this when they add it. So we're going to have a view calendar period, a view semester, a view course, etc. I would also call your attention to the names we have for these things. Even though we call the view for adding a new row, even though we call it create, so we have a create view, even though that's true, uh, we even though we call the view um, create calendar period, the permission is called add calendar period. Okay, and the same thing with change. Even though even though we might call the view modify calendar period, in fact, we don't have those views because the calendar period got less than a complete recognition in our system. But it's true for semesters. So instead of the view for to add a semester is called create semester. The view to change a semester is called modify semester. Okay, so we should know those things. Um, I'm sorry, it's not called that. It's called yes, it's called modify semester. Yes, absolutely. In fact, let's go take a look at that. So let's go find our views. Views. And let's go find the semester. Semester. So we've got the list, we've got the detail, we've got the create. I'm sorry, it's called update. Okay. It's called update, and the delete is called delete. So I just want you to remember to remind you that the terminology that we use to name the views is a little different from the terminology that we use to name the permissions. The names of the permissions are more kind of old school, add, change, and delete, whereas the names that we use for the view are more kind of newfangled computer science from this CRUD terminology, create, retrieve, update, delete. Okay, so I just want to warn you right off the bat that there's a mismatch between the terms used for permissions and for naming views. All right. Okay, so those are all the permissions we're going to have. These view permissions, we're going to have to take some action to have those created for us. They're not automatically there. The other three, the add, the change, and the delete, are automatically there. We're going to have a super user. We're going to use that for the person who is going to do all the user administration. Okay, but normal users, people who just use the system, are going to fit into three groups. Okay, course info user group is going to be just the person who can see everything. So they can look at a list, they can look at the detail, but they're not going to be able to add, change, or delete. Okay? The course info scheduler, that's the person who's going to build the schedule and do everything. That's a kind of our application-based mega user. Okay? So they're going to get all the permissions associated with our application. And the course info registrar is a person who can only do stuff with students. Okay? And but they can also see the instructor, the section, whatever. So for instance, a typical thing that people do in these schemes is that typically when you sign up a person, you'll say, well, they're going to be a course info user and one of the other two. Okay? Because of that, if somebody is a course info user and a course info registrar, they're going to be able to, by virtue of being a course info user, they're going to be able to see everything. And by virtue of being a course info registrar, they're going to be able to do all the add, change, and delete stuff for students. It's not a problem if a user is given a permission under two different groups that they're in. So it's not a problem that, for instance, um, that a particular person might get the permission to view the student by virtue of being a course info user, and to be able to view the student as well by virtue of being a course info registrar. Okay, so that's how we're setting these up. Okay, so that's our scheme. So let's go back to the script. How do we get the groups? Okay, well, the way to get the groups, the right way to do groups, is to create them in a migration. And why is that? Well, you don't want to create them by hand in your development copy, and then not have an easy way to install them on your production server. Migrations are the perfect way to do that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a migration that creates authorization groups. Okay, so let's take a look at where we are. Let's look at the migrations that we have. Okay, so the migrations under course info, we've gone up through 7. Okay, and what I want to do is I want to bring over a migration. Now I numbered them slightly differently. I'm going to bring over, I'm going to copy one here that in this version is number 9. We're going to change it to number 8. So let me paste this in here, and we're going to call this 008 group data. Okay, and let's look at 008 group data. And because I'm running it in a different sequence, I need to run it after 0007 instructor data. So this is what's going to come next. Okay, so I'm sorry, I have to change the number to 7. And then the text is going to say instructor data. Instructor data. Okay, and this is pretty much like the rest of the data migrations that we've done. How did we create this? Well, I created this by, I think I took a migration that we had already done, maybe a semester or something like that. I forget exactly where we did it. Oh, either the student or the instructor migration, and I cloned it and I played around with it. Okay, so this has a typical thing. We have the variable groups that holds a list of the groups that we want to create, and they're called course info user, course info scheduler, course info registrar. Okay, and we have the forward version of the migration, and we have the backward one. So you can see down here where we have the run Python. The forward one's called add group data. The backward one's called remove group data. Okay. And how does this work? Well, this is pretty much just almost a line for line clone of what we had for the migrations for student and instructor. Okay, so we go around through our list of groups, and we create them. That's what we do in add group data. So we add course info user, course info scheduler, course info registrar. Okay, and then of course in the reverse, what do we do? Well, we get each of those and we delete it. Okay, so let's take a look at where we are. So something I like to do is I like to take a look at the data that's in the database. Okay, so let's just take a look at the data that's in the database for groups in the tutorial database. So we're just going to use SQLite Studio, okay? And I've got each of my databases here. So this is the one for the tutorial database. And I want to go to auth group. That's the one that we want. So we want that. And I want to go to data. And you can refresh it all you want. We don't have any groups. Okay. And so when we're done, if this goes well, we should have 3 groups. So let's shrink that. And let's crank up manage.py. We're going to run manage.py. And let's show migrations. And you can see that we've run 7, but we haven't applied 8. So let's apply 8. Say migrate course info 0008. And it says it applied it. And let's just go look in SQLite Studio. And let's just refresh the data. And there they are. Okay. So, we've had these tables in the database we haven't paid a lot of attention to before. So for this auth application, one of the tables is group. And we are just essentially adding a record for each of the groups that we have. Okay. So let's the next thing we're going to do is that we're going to set up permissions. Okay, now let's go look at the ones that we have. We want to look at the table auth permission. So let's open up that and let's go to the data. And what we have is we have ours are down here. So let's see, our first one is student, add student, change student, delete student, add section, change section, delete section. So we have an add, a change, and a delete for each one of our model classes. Now, how did we get that? Well, when we did a make migrations, the last time we changed the model, or whenever we changed the model appropriately, the auto-generated migration added these to this table. Okay, if the auth application is installed, then these get added. Well, we don't have the view ones. If you remember here, we also wanted one called view course, view section, view instructor, view student. We don't have those. We just go back. There isn't a view anything. Okay, so now what we've got to do is let's put the database away and let's go back and look at the next part of our script. And what we want to do, we want to add view permissions for the model classes using the meta class variables. Okay, so we go to the model classes and we decorate them a little bit. So let's find the model classes. Let's go to models.py and let's do them one at a time. And you can see here for ordering, for the meta class that we have here, for calendar period, the only attribute that we've added for um, the the meta class, internal class for calendar period is ordering. So what are we going to do? Well, I'm just going to go over to my already baked version, and it turns out that we're going to add another of these. We're going to add the permissions. Okay. So where's that going to go? Find my cursor right here. Add this. So we're going to add this. And so the attribute of the variable is called permissions, and it holds a tuple, and the tuple has two parts. One is this is called the code name. This is what we're seeing in the database under code name. So this is the view calendar period, and this is the name, can view calendar period. Okay, and both of these conform to the standard names. Okay, so I've got one more opportunity for us to pause and let you do the rest of them. So this is the same scheme that we want to use for all of our model classes. So what I want you to do when we take a pause here is to clone this from class to class to class and change the name of the model class. So view semester let's undo that. And then of course the long name or the proper name is can view semester. Okay. So I'm going to pause now, and I'll be doing it, and you can do it too, and then we'll compare notes in a couple of minutes. Okay, we're back, and what we should have done is we should have added the attributes under the meta internal classes for each of the model classes. And so the last one that I have is for section. So here you can see the permissions for section. Okay, so make sure that's saved. And now, how am I going to get these applied? Well, now that they're here, all we have to do is run we have to make migration for course info, and then run it. So we can do an auto migration. So let's see what that would look like. So let's do a make migrations for course info. Make migrations course info. Okay. And what's interesting here is it does this change meta options, and it shows us all 6 of our model classes. It also puts in a change for the field a calendar period on semester, and I don't really think it should be doing that. I don't think we've actually changed that since the last time we ran this thing, but I'm not going to tell it to not do it. Okay. All right, so now we have this auto name, and I don't really like this name. So let's refactor rename it. Okay. So refactor rename. I like the 009. 0009. Okay. But let's have something more descriptive. Okay. And let's just say add can view permissions to models. How's that? And refactor that, and that's the new name of that. Okay, so now I just want to remind you, if you look at the database um, for auth permission, you got change, add, delete. You have all these things. You have no views, and we're going to add 6 more permissions view for each of the model classes. So run the let's run the migrations. So let's show migrations, and we see we have 0009 that isn't run. So it's migrate course info 0009, and it claims it worked. So let's just go look at that database. Okay, so let's refresh it and go down to the bottom. And at least in this implementation, they all wind up at the bottom because I think it's by row number. But that's going to be different for different relational database implementations. So for SQLite 3 and SQLite Studio, we're going to find these at the bottom. So there they are: view course, view instructor, view section, view semester, view student, view calendar period. So now we've got those additional permissions, and so we have all the permissions that we want to use in our permission scheme. Okay, so let's just go look at the permissions we wanted in our permission scheme. They are right here. And as you can look, we needed the add, the change, the delete, and a view for all 6 of the model classes, and we've got it. Well, terrific. So that's done. Okay. So we've gone down through 4. We created the migration that implements permissions for the authorization groups. Oh, we already did that. We've done 5. Create the auto migration that adds view permissions to the database. Okay. Where are we? Oh, you know what? We've got 4 and 5 should be switched. We didn't do 4, so we did 5. Okay, and now we're going to go back and we're going to do the next one. So we actually, now that we have the groups, which we did up here in 2, and we've added the new permissions that we need to the database. Now we are able to associate the permissions with the groups. And how do we do that? Well, we do that based upon the scheme that we showed you before. Okay, we know what permissions we want to give each of the 3 groups. We just need to have a migration that is smart enough to set that up. Okay, so we did 5 before 4 because we had this out of order, but here's the migration. So let's take a look what that migration might be. Okay. And this one I'm going to copy in from my already baked copy. Okay. And paste it. And this one is called 0010. Notice that now there are only two zeros when we get two leading zeros when we get to 10. Group permissions data. Okay, and this is fine, but I've changed the order from my other previously big. So now number 9 is called something else. It's called add can view permissions to models. Okay, so let's go down here and say we're dependent upon number 9, and let's give it the right name. Add can view permissions to models. Okay, that was the one right before us. Okay, and this is the same kind of deal. Now, this one is a bit more complex, and this is one that I think I'm going to post. Okay, to save you some time. Okay, so let me put that on the list of promised files. I'll pause and I'll be right back. Okay, I've added that on the list of things to give you. So this one is pretty much modeled after the other data migrations that we've done, but it's more complex because of this. We have to construct a proper permissions list for each of these things that we're trying to add. Okay, so instead of just having one big variable that holds the list that we're going to do either forwards or backwards, I created a procedure. This one's called populate permissions lists. Okay, and it builds a more complex version of all of this. Okay, so how does it look? Well, first of all, we have inside of it, we have a my group's initialization list. And this looks pretty much like the list we've been using in the other migrations. Okay. And the two things for each of these, we have the name of the group. That's going to allow us to find it and connect the permissions. And then we have our permissions list. And this is a list of the permissions we want to connect that user to. And we've built that up above. Okay. And then when we're done, we're going to return this group's initializations list. Okay. Now, so that part is pretty much the same as the other migrations that we've done. Now, how do we put together the permission lists? Well, they're pretty easy. We're essentially we're actually doing queries that come back with a query set. So we say permission. That's the name of the model class. It's a part of the auth application, auth permission. Okay. And so we say permission objects filter. And so we want to say that we want all of the permissions in the course info app for instructor. So we're going to get 4. We're going to get add, change, and delete that were initially built in, and we're going to get the view which we subsequently added. Okay? So what I've done is I put together a list of instructor permissions, student permissions, semester permissions for each of the model classes, right? Now, um, so, um, and then we need to combine them. In some of these cases, we need to combine them. Now, I don't think we have an example so far where we had to combine query sets, and it turns out you can combine query sets um, using a procedure called chain. So we're going to do that. So we'll get to that in a minute. Okay. Um, so we have the group of permissions that's associated with each of the model classes. And then what I want is I want to get the view student, the view calendar period, the view semester, the view course, the view section. Okay, now how do I combine these? Well, the course info user permissions, this is for course info user, we chain together, we combine uh, the the view instructor, view calendar period, view student, view semester, view course, view section. So those are the only 6 permissions that a course info user is going to get. Whereas scheduler permissions, a course info scheduler, it's going to get a combination of all the instructor permissions and all the student permissions and all the calendar period permissions. They're all going to be combined. So there are 6 times 4. There'll be 24 permissions here. And then the course info registrar is just going to get the student permission. So it's going to get the 4 for student. Okay? And what I do is I take these 3 permissions lists and I associate them with the user that they're supposed to be in. And then in the forward version of the migration, if you remember, the migration is just a run Python. Okay. The forward version is add group permissions data, and the backward group is called remove group permissions data. And so let's look at the forward version. Well, again, this looks pretty much like the loops that we've had in these data migrations all along. Okay, so what we're doing is we're getting these group objects. Okay, and group objects have a field called permissions, and then there's a method called set. Okay, and then we give it the proper list. So we're pulling the list out of our data structure that should be associated with the one that we have. So we set the permissions as a group, and then we save it. Now, when we do this in reverse, my initial version of the one that went in reverse was naive. Okay, there's a way to clear the permissions for a group. Okay, and so what I initially did is I went through and I didn't pay any attention to the permissions list. What I did was for each of the groups, I cleared their permissions. Well, that would be good unless somebody came along and gave a group another permission. It was kind of outside of our scheme. And so what I eventually did is I came back and I refactored this such that it does actually go to the permissions list in our data structure here. And it only removes the one that we have in our list. So you can test this by you run this migration. You you go out and see all the permissions that are there. You add another one, some other one that's out of the permissions model that isn't associated with our part of the database, and then uh, unapply the migration, and you'll see that the only one that's left that you added was the one that wasn't part of our scheme. So this is a little bit more robust. Do we need to go that far? Well, I just thought it was a good idea to do it. I think you really like these migrations to, when you reverse them, to only undo the things that were done in the forward version, and this one does precisely that. Okay, so here we go. We've got that. Let's take a look at how this runs. Okay, now before we do that, let's go to take a look at. Let's run the server. Okay, and let's open it up. Okay, we'll see we're logged in here. Oh, I'm sorry, we're not logged in here. So let's log in. And remember, our super user is called test user, and so is secret. So let's do that. Okay. And now let's go to admin, which we're still doing with the URL path. And here we are. We're authorized to see all of this. So let's look at this. Let's look at groups. So here are groups. We've got 3 groups. These are the ones that we added in that first of the migrations that we did. Okay. And let's look at course info registrars. Let's click on that. And you can see that here are the available permissions, but we haven't chosen any. Okay, and if you look down at the bottom, here are the ones that we want. Okay, so it looks pretty good. Looks pretty good indeed. And I don't know where CanView session is, but I don't see it. Is CanView session up here somewhere? Well, we're going to find out if it's not there when we need it. Okay, so maybe we have a mistake. We're going to have to back up. CanView session. We should have it. Let's go look at the database. View. Oh, view session. That's not ours. Its section is ours. Yeah, it's fine. So if we go back, see, I scared myself for nothing. Session isn't ours, but the section is, and it's got an add, a change, a delete, and a view. So they all have that. But we haven't given that group the permissions. We're going to do that as we run our migration. Now, I've learned a lot about PyCharm over the last 13, 14 weeks, and the versions actually changed though, but I always had a heck of a time stopping the server, and I don't know, probably the whole time, or at least right now, you can simply go up and hit the VCR stop button, and it stops it. Okay, so that's it. So let's show migrations. Okay, 10 hasn't been applied, so migrate course info 0010, only 2 O's. It says it applied it. Okay. Um, Now, when you look at that on the database, it is particularly unappealing. Let's go look at that on the database. Okay, so what are we going to look at? Well, we're going to look at auth group permissions. That's the table that holds this. So let's open this. Let's go to the data side. It's all foreign keys. Oh, wow. I don't want to decipher that. Okay, so cheating on some of the other ones by looking in the database, well, that was fun. Now it's not fun. So what could we do instead? Well, we could just go, we could run the server again, and we could go, to admin. Let's log in over there this time. Okay. And then, oh, I see, we're already logged in. We have a sticky login, which we're not going to fix for another. We are going to fix it in this session. Okay. All right, that's fine. And then let's look at groups, and let's look at a course info user. View, 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 view. Just what we wanted. Okay, and then let's look at course info scheduler. This has everything. So this should have all four: add, change, delete, and view for all of the model classes. Okay, and then the last one, which is course info registrar. Again, we decided that they just were going to do something, we're going to be able to do things with students. And maybe that's not as practically useful in our application the way it is right now, but I just wanted to be able to show that we could differentiate between the groups of users and their permissions. Okay, so that's all there. Now, the good thing about having done that as migration is that that's a migration that we can apply on the production server. And so we can install our authentication scheme on the production server and not have to create it manually, which would just be a real pain. Okay, so it looks like we have our scheme. I just want to point out that we don't have any users that use our scheme yet. Okay, so let's go see where we are in the list that we have here. Okay, so we just did 4, I think. We did 5 before 4. Now we're down to 6. Manually create users. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create individual users. One that's a course info user, one that's a course info scheduler, and one that's the course info registrar. And I'm going to call them CI user, CI scheduler, CI registrar. And I guess I could have created a migration that did this, but to tell you the truth, I ran out of gas. Okay, so I did it manually. I probably wouldn't want to apply my test users to my production database, and that was really convincing for me that I probably didn't want to go to the effort of creating yet one more migration. So how could we do this manually? Well, just go to the app. Okay, well, we'll do it with our super user. So go to the app. Admin. And we're still in as our super user. If we weren't already logged in as test user, who's the super user, we would log in as test user. And now we're going to go to users, And the only one we have so far is our test user, super user. And now we're going to create 3 more. Okay, so let's add user. So let's call this one CI user. And let's use our famous SOA secret again. Easier to remember. Okay, and save that. And now it's going to ask us for permissions. We have to say they're active. That's a default. We have to click staff status. Well, we want to. And which group are they part of? Well, they're just part of course info user. So we just add that. That's the only group they're part of. We don't add individual permissions. We want to stay away from that. It's too much work to maintain. And then let's say save. So we've got CI user. Let's add another one. CI scheduler. Okay, and the same thing, so is secret. Okay, and again, let's give them staff status. And let's say they're a combination of a course info user and a course info scheduler. Okay, now somebody could argue that these two overlap with each other, but I like the idea that if a person is a user at all, they get the user permissions. I was going to leave the view permissions out of course info scheduler, but that would have made the code in the migration that built the permissions. It would have made it more complex, so I took the easy way out. So it's my intention that if you're a user of our app at all, you get course info user, and then you get potentially you could get one other role. Okay, so that's the course info scheduler. And last but not least, we've got course info registrar. And the idea I have for this one, this is going to be SOA's secret too. The idea I had for this one is that this would be a user that could add students to sections. Well, it's going to turn out that that's not going to work the way that we thought, but with a little more work, we would be able to make that work. Okay, so what are they? They are a course info user, yes. They are a course info registrar, yes. Okay, and save. All right, all done. Now, what about the possibility that we have a person who is part of some other app? Okay, so we have more than one app. We don't have just a course info app. Let's say we have somebody who they're a member of staff, so they're able to log in generally to this server, but they don't have any of our permissions. So I wanted to create a user like that because I want to make sure we treat them appropriately on our site. So I'm going to add one more user, and I'm going to call that, because this is this common man kind of user, I'm going to call it everyman. Okay, and everyman is going to have SOA's secret as his password. Maybe I should have said every woman. I'll do that next time. SOA's secret. Okay, we've got those two. Okay, and I'm not going to fill the names in and all these. Okay, so they have staff status. That's going to mean that they're able to log in. Okay, but they they're nothing to us. They're not involved in our application at all. Okay, they're not even a course info user. So we're going to answer the question with our testing. Well, what can they see and what can they do? Okay, it's going to turn out I want them to be able to see our about page and nothing else. Okay, let's give it a save. Okay, so those are the users that we're going to have. Could we have done this with a migration? Yeah, we could have. Maybe someday I'll make a migration for this, but for right now, we're doing it by hand. Okay? All right. So let's go back and see what we have here. What do we have? Oh, so we've gone through number 6. We manually created the users that we wanted. We added one more actually. Okay, now I want to add a username to the logout message in our base.html so I can see who's logged in. Okay, because on my page right now I can't. Okay, if I'm logged in, it just says logout. If I'm not logged in, it says log in. But I don't know who is logged in. So we're going to do a pretty crude version of that. Let's go to our base.html. Okay, and right now you can see that we where are we? We don't want to be in the footer. Where? Okay, I'm going to pause it so I can find my code on my own time. I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. So here's the code we added. I think we added it in the last part of this tutorial. But here's what we added, the log out. Okay, so if the user is authenticated, then we ought to be able to get the name of the user and add that in. So here from my already baked version, okay, I'm just going to show you the code that we're going to replace that line with. Okay, so we just have log out right now, and now we're going to say log out, comma, user get username. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. So now we're going to be able to tell who the user is. Okay, all right, so let's crank up the app and let's see where we are. Okay, so we're logged out as we're logged in as test user. Up until now, okay, user logins have been sticky. Okay, we haven't decided that we were going to have the user logged out when we close the browser, for instance. So, for instance, we can close the browser here, and we can click, and we're still logged in. We can decide to quit the browser, which really closes the browser app. Okay, and we can come back and fire it up again, and we're still logged in. So we haven't fixed the problem of sticky logins, but we will, and we'll do it soon. Okay, so right now we're in test user. Okay, and so let's just see. The test user gets all the functionality that everybody else gets. They can see instructors and sections and courses and semesters and students and the about page. Okay, so let's log out here, and let's log in as CI user. Okay. Good old so is secret. And what can CI user do? Well, CI user can go everywhere as well. Okay, because we haven't really stopped them. We've not protected the views. We have not added code to the templates to not show things that you're not authorized to see, so everybody sees everything, including our buddy Everyman. So here's a guy who doesn't have any privileges with us at all. And our buddy Everyman can do whatever he wants, including adding things and changing things and deleting things and everything. Okay, so we have a scheme, but we haven't enforced the scheme, even either in terms of the places we're going to allow them to go, and the things we're going to allow them to do, or what options we're going to show them. Okay, we're not hiding anything at all yet, and we're not restricting anything at all. So we're going to have to do that soon. So let's take a look at where we are. I tell you something that I would like to do right now is I'd like to jump ahead and do number 13 because I told you it was coming. Okay, so how do we get the login to not be sticky? Well, we go to our settings.py and we add a variable. Okay, and it's called session expire at browser close, and we set that to true. So let's do that. So I'm going to go into my already baked version of settings.py. And here I'm going to go into our settings.py. Where are you? Settings.py. And let's go down to the bottom. Okay. And one of the things we're going to bring over is this session expire at browser close is equal to true. Okay, so why don't we save that? Alrighty. And now let's go here. So we are logged in as Everyman. So if we close the browser, we just close the browser window. This is how it works on the Mac. If we close the browser window, okay, and then let's say we come back, we haven't really closed the browser. In the Mac, you have to actually quit the app. Okay, so if we go up to Safari and we say Safari quit, okay, and now we come back and fire it up. Oh, sorry, I think we're going to have to restart the server. So let's stop the server. Let's restart the server. And let's try it again. So log out Everyman. Let's quit Safari. And now let's start it up again. And we're not logged out. Well, there'll be a slight pause while I find out why that's not working. It should have logged me out. Hi, this is Kevin. I'm back. Unfortunately, my Camtasia app just quit, so I hope I didn't lose everything I recorded so far. Let's hope. Okay, so where are we? Well, let's see where we are. We got through number 7. We added the username to the logout message. We're getting pretty close. Okay. I just want to show you what we're doing next. We're going to refactor the detail views. Okay, so let's take a look at the detail views and you'll see what I'm saying. So let's log in. Okay, so let's log in as a CI user. Secret, so a secret. Okay. All right, so we look fine here. It knows we're CI user here. Okay. Let's go. Let's look at instructors. It knows we're CI users here. Okay, let's click on one of the instructors and see how it just says login. Okay. It doesn't know us. Okay. And why does it not know us? It doesn't know us because in our code, we were following what Pinkham told us to do, and Pinkham told us to do a render to response. And it turns out that render to response doesn't give the template. It doesn't put the information from the request. It doesn't make it available to the template in the context. And in fact, in Django 2, render to response has been deprecated in favor of render. Well, we only had that old code in one spot, and that is in each of the cases of the detail views. Let's go find that. Okay. So let's find the views. And let's find the first one we have up here is instructor. And let's look at instructor detail. And you'll see that when we actually go and we render the page, we use this call render to response. Well, this isn't what we really want, okay? The problem is that this request parameter up here doesn't get passed through. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace this with a render. So we're just going to shorten up the name. Render. And render will work if we just add one more argument. We're just going to put the request right here as the first of the arguments to the call. Okay, and that's all we have to do. We had to get the kind of old-fangled thing out and the new-fangled thing on. You remember that we have a lot of views in the Pinkham blog that are not protected by authentication. Okay, so if you don't have to worry about things that are in the requests, like the user information, then you're fine. Okay. Unfortunately, that's not our case here. So let's just test that. We went to the instructor detail and we fixed that. So I did a save. Now let me crank this up. Okay. And I'm here. So let me just let me go to about so I know where I am. So let's go to instructors. Okay, and let's go down to see my old friend Jane Delory. She was one of my freshman high school teachers. And look what it's got. It still knows who we are. Okay? So what we did is we did that refactoring. Okay? Is it refactoring? Well, we're correcting a bug, so it's more than refactoring. We are changing the behavior. Okay. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to show you the code again. Okay, which is we're in the instructor detail view, and what did we do? Well, we took render to response, okay, and we shortened it up to render, and then we added the request as the first argument on the parameter list. And I just want to point out that we can do that because the method that we're in gets the request as one of its parameters. So we're just passing it through. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause. Okay? And what I want you to do is to do this for the other model classes. Okay? So we've done instructor detail. I'm sorry, all the other model classes that have a detail view. So that doesn't include a calendar period. Okay, so we're going to do semester detail, student detail, etc. So do that and test it and come back. And again, when you go to the detail page, it should remember who you are. You should be able to still see that it knows who the user is. Because right now, that works on instructor detail page. Okay, but on section detail page, watch, it knows we're a CI user here. Go to the detail page, it forgot us. Okay, so do it for all of the rest. Do it for sections and courses and semesters and students. And I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, now we're back. Okay, so you should have made that change in all of the detail views and tested them such that as you march your way across that nav panel from the first one, which we did together, we don't lose the user, to the last one, students, we don't lose the user either. Okay, so that should be all done. All right, so what's next in our script? Let's just take a look. So far, okay, we can log in, and when we log in, it seems to know who we are and what groups we're part of. It seems to remember that on all the pages, but we haven't changed the behaviors. Okay, so right now we're not keeping anybody from looking at or doing view, add, change, or delete on the basis of what groups they're in and what permissions are assigned to that group. We just can go anywhere we want. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to find some code to make it a lot easier to check if a user is logged in and whether they have the proper permissions for the view that we're going to. And that's done with decorators. And the decorators that we're going to use, we're just going to take the ones that are right out of the Pinkham book. So let's do that. Now, in the Pinkham book, he puts all of the authorization stuff in its own app called users, or user perhaps. And I'm just going to say that we don't really, well, we're not doing that. Okay, so in his code, this decorators.py is not in his same app directory, but in ours, it is going to be in the same app directory. So let me go find our, Where's my decorators? Decorators is up here. All right. So I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to come in here and put it into the course info app directory and paste it in. Decorators.py. And this is pretty cool code. Okay. Now, the idea of a decorator is the decorator is one of the well-known object-oriented design patterns that come from a group of computer scientists called the Gang of Four, who wrote a book that's called the Gang of Four book. And in the decorator pattern, here's what we do. We take an object and we wrap it inside of another object. And we either add functionality or we subtract functionality from the object. And one of the things that we can do is we can do authorization. So you can't get to the inner object unless you pass the, say, the login test or the permission test. And so what we have here is we have two classes. One that's a wrapper that that we're going to use to wrap a view that's going to say you have to be logged in to run this view. Okay, and the other one we're going to say that you have to have a certain permission or be a part of a group that has a certain permission to run this view. And these are kind of cool. What is kind of interesting here is he's created a custom code. He has an outer wrapper, this require authenticated permission, which under the cover uses an inner wrapper, login required. And so when we use require authenticated permission, it's going to imply that the login is also required. Okay, so now that we have that code, how do we actually decorate a view, a class-based view? Well, before that, I want to make one more comment, okay? These class-based views have a lot of good features, but the decorator features have not kept up with them. Okay, now I think that one of these days soon we're going to see that the decorators are going to be given the power to easily do the kind of decoration that we want for the two things that we have. And we won't have to do it with custom code. We won't have to create two custom decorator classes, one which uses the other in order to get what we want. But that day hasn't come yet. So in order to use our kind of classy class-based views, we're using the code from the Pinkham book. I'd rather use standard Django code because the Django project's going to maintain it over its life. But, I'll take some Pinkham code. Okay. I don't want to write the code myself. So the best thing would be to use decorators from the Django distribution, but we don't have these. So we're going to rely on the Pinkham code. That means that over time, as we go from release to release, we might have to update this. We might have to maintain it ourselves. Hopefully Pinkham is going to maintain it on his website, so we can go back there and get that code. So this is certainly better than writing it ourselves, but not quite so good as using code from the Django distribution. Okay, so let's go back to views. Okay, views.py here, and let's get started. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap the views for instructor. Okay, so we have instructor list, instructor detail, instructor create, instructor update, instructor delete. Okay, I'm going to wrap these with the decorators. Okay, and we're going to test it. Okay, so we'll do that together. And then I'm going to leave you on your own to do all the other ones. Okay, so let's see what happens when we do this. So let's wrap the first one. Now, the good thing for me is I just have to go back to my uh, already baked code, right? So let's see what we're going to do. So these decorators look like this, okay? Uh, they begin with an @ sign, okay, because they're kind of an annotation, and that's a common computer programming language syntax for annotation. So we say that we want to require authenticated permission, and the permission that we want is for the course info app, and the code name of it is view instructor. Okay, the code names we saw in the database, you'll remember, let's look at auth permission. These are the code names. So view instructor is right here. Okay, that's it. So these are the permissions that we're interested in, and these are their code names. Okay, very good. All right, so we have everything but the import. So let's highlight this. Okay, require authenticated permission, and let's give it a command return. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, I wanted an alt return. So let's undo that. An alt return. And we want to do an import. And there's the import. Okay, so that says that you have to have the permission to view the instructor to even go to the instructor list. Okay, let's test that. Okay, we're going to test that. I've interrupted the recording in order to do some editing, and now I am actually going to do that testing. So what we're testing is we have wrapped the instructor list view with a custom decorator that's going to require that the user have the view instructor permission. So we get started. All right, so most of our users are going to be logged in. So I'm going to log in as a CI user. And give it my password. And now I'm just going to click on the instructors link, and we go there just fine. Okay. Now, it makes it a little bit harder to test because I don't have a user I did not get the view instructor permission, but you remember I created a user called Everyman. And he doesn't have any of the permissions. So let's log him in. So you can see we're Everyman. And let's say we want to go to instructors. And we get a 403 forbidden. Okay, so no matter what we do, we're not getting to that. We're not getting to the instructor list. Now, you might say this is a pretty unfriendly page, but we're going to prevent the user from getting there at all. Okay, so not only are they not allowed to go there, but we're not even going to give them the option to try. So we're going to prevent them from seeing this unfriendly page. But in any case, even if someone were to take our URL and they were to type it in all by themselves and press enter, they could not get there without being logged in and having the proper permissions. Okay, so it's pretty well protected. Okay, so we've seen it with and without, and I just want to point out, if I log out, and let's say we go to the About page. If I'm not logged in at all and I click on the instructor's link, I'm going to get a 404 code. And this is because it is sending me to a login page, which is not the login page that I want to go to. It's not the one that we have configured. And we don't really want that kind of behavior. We don't want people to click on things that they're not supposed to. The first thing that they're supposed to do here is to log in. So we're going to allow this somewhat unfriendly behavior because, again, we're not going to give the person who hasn't logged in the opportunity to click on that link. So we're not going to see this unfriendly behavior. I just wanted to show you that it was there. Okay, so we've wrapped the instructor list. Let's wrap instructor detail. So how do we do that? Well, we just keep cloning this. And we want to maintain our two blank lines between classes there. And so this isn't view, and this is actually view instructor as well. Okay, because what do you do on the detail page? Well, you view the instructor detail. So these two are the same. We have the same permission in play on both instructor list and on instructor detail. And let's just do all of them for right now. We're going to do all the instructor ones. So I'm going to copy that, and in front of create, you'll remember that the permission name is not the word create, but add. So this one's going to be add instructor. That's what we're checking for there. Okay, and then on update, you'll remember it's not called update, it's called change. These are more the older version of these words. Okay, and then the last one, the delete, is called delete. So again, we'll put that in there, and we'll say delete instructor. Okay, so at this point, all right, we should be preventing users from doing things with instructors that they're not permitted to do. Now, we may have some ugly behavior where they'll click on things and they'll get kind of ugly results, but we're not going to expose any of our content that we're not intending to expose. And we'll clean up the nasty side effects when we make some changes in our template. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Let's log in as a CI user. Okay. So am I able to list instructors? Yes, I am. Okay. Can I create a new instructor? No, I can't. 403 forbidden. Okay. Now, it's kind of ugly that I have a button there to click when I'm not allowed to do it, and we're going to cure that, but still, we can't get there. Okay, if I go to a detail page, can I edit the instructor? No, I can't. That's forbidden as well. Okay, and what if I want to delete an instructor? Well, can't do that either. Okay, all right, so we have a user who's not supposed to be able to do anything but view, and that seems to be enforced. Now let's log out of that one, and let's log in as a user who can do those things. Let's log in as CI scheduler. And I can do all of our features. Okay, so can we list the instructors? Yeah. Can we create an instructor? Yes, we can. If we go to the detail page, can we edit the instructor? Yes, we can. Can we delete the instructor? Yes, we can. Okay, so again, aside from the fact that we're showing users controls that they can click on that are going to lead to this refusal behavior, okay, and that's not good interaction design. But in terms of security and in all this authentication, we seem to be getting the kind of behavior that we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to pause here, right? And what I'm going to have you do is working together, we put these decorator annotations on top of the views for instructor. What I want you to do is to go through and clone it and do these things for all the rest of the views. So every view that we have is going to be restricted, okay? You're going to have to be logged in and have the permission for that view in order to do that view and eventually go to that page. Okay, so again, together we've done instructor, and what I want you to do and then test is section, course, semester, and student. Okay? So I want you to decorate all of them, and remember, you need to change the name of the permission each time. All right? Okay, I'm going to pause and I'm going to let you do that and test that, and then we'll come back. Okay, so I've got all mine done, and hopefully you do too. The last of the views that I did was student delete, and of course I wrapped it with the decorator require authenticated permission, and the one we want is delete student. And I did the testing, that'll work just fine. Okay, so let's get back to our script, all right? And we've come a long way. Okay, so we added the decorators. We wrapped the class-based views. Okay, now and we already did 13, but we do have a problem the fact is, if somebody comes to our site without any further path, they just have the domain name, the redirect route is going to send them to the sections list, and not everybody is authorized to see that. And there are people who are logged in who have that problem too, like our everyman user. So let's just take a look at the symptom. Okay, so let's come here and let's log out, and let's log in as everyman. Okay, this is the person who can't do any of our permissions, doesn't have any of our permissions. So let's put in so is secret for him. And he goes right to 403 forbidden because he's forbidden even from seeing the sections. Okay. All right. So the place that we forward to after we log in is probably the easiest thing for us to do is to say, even after you log in, we're just going to forward you to the About page. Okay? And if you come here and you don't log in, well, then we're going to redirect you to the About page. So, because that's the only thing you can see if you're not authorized. And why did I do that? I just wanted you to see how if you have some content that's not protected at all, that's some part of that is where you're going to direct the people who don't have any who don't have any permissions and or who are not logged in. Okay. All right. So how are we going to do that? Well, there are two parts to it. The first part has to do with where we're going to put our, where we're going to forward when we get the root URL. Okay, so let's just take a look at that. How we're going to find that? Well, let's go to urls.py. Oh, for the whole project. This is the high-level one under Easy University. And we're going to go to that. And so I just spun up my pre-baked one. And let me spin up this one. So we're looking at this. So we say we want to go to section list URL pattern. Well, not everybody has the authorization to do that. So what could we do? Well, send them to the URL pattern that gets us to the About page. So let's just change this to send them to the About page. Okay? And the other thing that we want to do, so this is called the About URL pattern, right? It turns out that we have in our settings.py, we have a login redirect URL. So after we log in, we go to this page. And again, we don't want to go to the section list because we may log in, but we can't see the section list because we are everyman. We don't have any permissions. So let's just have that redirect to the About page as well. Okay, so now let's go over there and we go to the About page. So that's no problem for everyman at all. Okay, so here we're not logged in. Okay, so if we're not logged in and we go to our root URL, where does it take us? To the About page. Okay, if we log in and we don't have any authorizations, this is true of this everyman user. what happens here? It goes to the About page too. So this is kind of safe behavior. Everybody can go to the About page, regardless of who they are, because this is the only content we're not protecting. Now, I just wanted to show you that we could do that. Okay. Typically, in one of these internal record-keeping systems, we protect all the content. You know, we don't even have an About page. You can't see anything, right? The only way to see anything at all is to log in. Okay, well, we're going to be a little bit more forgiving than that. All right? All right. That's how we're doing that. Okay, so let's just see what we've got left. Okay. So we changed the target of the redirects. We've already made the sessions unsticky. Okay, so now what's left? Well, now we just need to change the templates, okay? And what do I mean by that? Well, let's just look. In our, right now, with the templates that we have, we show places that you can't go. We show behaviors, we show options that certain users are not allowed to do. So if, for instance, we are everyman and we want to go to list the instructors, we're going to get a forbidden. That's not good interaction design. The better design is to only show people what they can do. Okay? That's better interaction design. It's probably better security as well because we're not enticing people to hack into things. Okay? This is good security, but it's not perfect. And certainly the less they know about the things they can't see, the harder it is for them to break their way into them. Okay? So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to go through and we're going to only show these nav links to users who are allowed to view instructors or section or courses or semesters or students. If they don't have that ability, then they're not going to get that link. Okay, and that's because that's sort of the minimal permission that we could have. No matter what, you're always going to see the nav link for About because we're not protecting that at all. And then we're going to go on and we're going to hide controls on pages. Okay, so the thing that's going to follow this is we're going to go, say, to sections. Oh, sorry, we can't get to anything like this. Okay, so why don't we leave this guy here, not be talking about what's coming next, and just do what we're doing now. And for everyman, what we're going to do is we're going to hide all these but About. Okay, so let's go do that. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do instructors and test that, and then I'm going to have you do sections and courses and semesters and students. Okay, so let's go do instructors. All right, so where does that go on? Well, that goes on in our template base.html. So let's open that up. Okay, and let's go to the nav links. And here they are. They're out here. They're unprotected. Okay, and then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to protect them. So we're going to take this first list item and we want to surround it with some template code. Okay, and what's that template code going to look like? Well, it's going to look like let me copy this from my already baked version. It's going to look like this. Okay, so here's what we do. We can say if perms, that's for permission, course info, that's our app, and here's our code name for the permission, view underscore instructor. If it has that permission, then we're going to render that link. Then we're going to have an end if. Okay? So again, I'm going to do this one, and then you're going to do the ones after. So let's go and look. Well, look, it's already tested. Here is Everyman. He's not able at this point to see instructors, and so we don't render the nav link. Okay, well, that's good. What if we had more permissions? What if we were CI user? Well, let's log in CI user and see what CI user sees. And CI user can see the instructors and can go there. Okay, so we're going to take a pause, and during that pause, you're going to give the same treatment to the link, the nav link for sections, and then courses, and then semesters and students. And about we're going to leave unprotected. So you're going to, kind of clone the solution all the way down through the rest of these what are they? Model classes. That's what they are. Okay? And you're going to test it, and then we're going to get back together. See you in a few. Okay, we're back. And I just wanted to show you one of the kind of the details of the testing, which is, let's say we come here and we don't log in. So we just have the root domain name. We're going to come here. We're going to go to the about page, and the only link we're going to have is about. And we can say, okay, take me to the login page. And we do have a nav link to get to the about page. But that's it. If we're not logged in, that's all we can see. And that's pretty much all we see if we are logged in as Everyman too. Just log in as Everyman. And that's it. We could just go to the About page. That's it. And then when we log out, we can toggle between About and the login. Pretty cool, huh? All right, so now we're in pretty good shape here, except that when we get to, for instance, the detail page, we get options to do things that we're going to be forbidden to do. And again, that's just not good interaction design or good security. You shouldn't be kind of advertising features you don't want people to be aware that maybe others have, but they don't. Right? So why don't we log in with a CI user who has kind of mixed security. And let's look at the symptoms. Okay, so the CI user can go to instructors, and that's fine. And if the CI user wants to create a new instructor, forbidden. Why? Because they don't have that permission. Okay, now we don't want to show them the button if they can't do it. So if they don't have this permission, they shouldn't be seeing the button. So on the detail page, which is where this is, we're going to want to be hiding the create button. Okay. And then if we go to a detail page, I'm sorry, this is the, I'm sorry, this is not the detail page. I misspoke. Okay, so this is the list page. Okay, we want to hide the add button, create button. On the detail page, we want to hide the edit button if you're not allowed to edit. Here we get a forbidden, and we want to hide the delete button if you're not allowed to delete, because again, this is not good interaction design. All right, so let's get all that changed. And I think that's the end of our work, right? So we did the change to the nav links, and now we're going to add the permission checks into instructor list and instructor detail. So I'm going to show you how to make those work, and we're going to test that together. And then we're just going to have you do that for all the rest of the model classes. Okay, well, I've done it for the two instructor templates, list and detail, and then you'll do it for the two templates for all the rest of the model classes. So let's go make some changes. Okay, so let's copy this code that we have here because it's very helpful. Okay, and let's go the first to instructor list. So instructor list is here. An instructor list, it's got two buttons on it, and whether it really needed two buttons for compatibility with small devices or not, I don't know. I trusted Pinkham and his layout, and I put the two buttons on it, but we don't have double buttons on our other forms, so I'm a little suspicious that we could cut out one of these buttons, but let's not worry about that right now. So there are two buttons that we want to hide if you can't, if you don't have the permission to do a create or an add. So let's come up here. Okay, so instead of view instructor, we need to have add instructor to do this. Okay, and we need to do a end if. Okay, and the next one, the next button is in a div all by itself. So I'm just going to surround that div. I'm going to put that div inside of an if, and it's the same test because we're doing the same thing. And at the end of the div, I'm going to put an end if. End if. Okay. So that's those are the changes that we have to make to the instructor list. Okay, what about instructor detail? Well, let's go to instructor detail. And we've got two buttons. We have two links that are rendered as buttons, one for edit, one for delete. Okay, and we need to wrap them in their appropriate condition. Okay, so let's take the first one for edit. Okay, let's paste that same test that we had before. Okay. Okay, so there's the test, and again, typically what we want to hide is not only the link but the LI that it's inside. So let's do, sorry, I'm on the wrong spot here. Let's do a percent, bracket percent end if. And we don't have the right test, okay? So we don't want to test for add instructor. We want to test for change instructor. Okay, change instructor. Okay. And then for the next one, okay, we want to test for delete instructor. And let's do that. Delete instructor. And we want that to have a proper end if as well. End if. Okay, so let's look. We've got a button called edit, and that's being protected by the change instructor permission, and we have one for delete instructor, and that's being protected by the delete instructor permission. They look like they're in the right spots. Let's do a save, and let's test it. Okay. So we're in CI user, and CI user ought to be able to list the instructors, but they shouldn't be able to do the further things. So we can list the instructors, but look, on the instructor list, there's no button available to add. Okay, and then if we go to the detail page for Miss Jane Delory, Mrs. Jane Delory, probably the late Mrs. Jane Delory, unfortunately. We can see that we have a page, but we don't have buttons for edit and delete. And we don't have them because we don't have those permissions. Okay, now that's appropriate for somebody without the permission. Let's just make sure we haven't broken it for somebody with the permission. So CI scheduler should have the permission. Let's see. So instructors, I can create a new instructor. That's good. And let's go down and click on Mrs. Delory again. And she can edit. With her, you can edit or you can delete. Okay, so we're getting the appropriate behavior. So now we have the right interaction design. So we not only have the permissions, but we're only showing the what we in interaction design call the affordances. We're only showing the capability to do something if, in fact, the user is allowed to do it. And this is this is what you're expected to do in terms of modern web interaction design. So right now, together, we've done instructor list and instructor detail, and then we tested them to make sure that they behave the right way. And now here's where you have to do the rest of them. So you're going to do course list and course detail. You're going to do section list and section detail. You're going to do semester list and semester detail. And you're going to do student list and student detail. So I'm going to put you on pause while you put all the code in and you test it, and I'll be back for a wrap up. See you in a few. Okay, we're back from the wrap up, and you should have this all tested. I just want to remind you about a finer point of the way we set up the permissions. Okay, so it turns out that CI user can just see the lists of everything, right? So when we click on them, we shouldn't be seeing the add button on any of these. And we don't, okay? And CI scheduler can see all, it can do all the operations for everything. But CI registrar can do all of the activities for student. And let's put in our password and look. So if we're the CI registrar, we go to instructors. We can't add, we can't do changes and deletes. Same for section, same for courses, same for semesters. But when we get to students, we can do it. We could add a student. We could edit a student. We could delete a student. Okay, so that's it for the assignment. We're wrapped up. I'm going to say bye until next time. Bye-bye.